Today, we are going to talk about the unpredictable situation that unfolded in Nepal this week. And trust me, this story is not just about a social media ban. This is a much deeper issue related to corruption, youth frustration, and the authoritarian tendencies of the government. Most of you probably already have some idea about this situation. But for those who don't, let's clearly explain the timeline. Since November 2023, the Nepal government had been sending notices to multiple social media companies for mandatory registration. Then, on August 25, 2024, the cabinet decided that 26 major social media platforms would be banned. Finally, in early September 2025, an official announcement was made that these platforms must register or face a ban. Now, which platforms were involved? Let me read them out for you. Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, X, Twitter, YouTube, Viber, Bottim, basically all the apps that young people use daily. The interesting part was that TikTok was not banned, even though it is a Chinese app. In fact, TikTok had already complied with government rules the previous year. The government's demand was that social media companies must officially comply and register in Nepal. But what does this registration actually mean? In simple terms, it means that these companies must set up an office in Nepal, appoint a local contact person who follows Nepalese laws, help locals with licensing issues, assist people in filing complaints, and create a grievance redressal system to handle user complaints. Basically, the government wanted that if you operate in Nepal, you follow Nepal's rules. This included respecting data protection laws. If any issue arises, there should be one accountable person locally. On the surface, this seems like a good idea. Nepal wanted to ensure that people's data is not sold abroad. It also wanted to protect young users, especially in cases of harassment or misuse of photos and videos. But what happened next raised serious questions about the government's real intentions. On Monday, September 8, 2025, Nepal witnessed its worst unrest in decades. Thousands of young Nepalis came out on the streets of Kathmandu and other cities. Protesters pushed through barbed wire, forcing riot police to retreat into the parliament complex. Why were these protests happening? Young protesters said that this was not just about a social media ban. It was about widespread corruption and lack of transparency. The youth said they pay taxes but do not receive proper documentation. They questioned where their money is actually being used. Some also claimed that children of government officials live luxurious lives abroad, while their parents extract money from ordinary Nepalese citizens. Interestingly, after the social media ban, students prepared for protests using old-school methods. The movement was organized without major social media platforms. Messages spread through word of mouth in university campuses, face-to-face coordination in college groups, and through whatever messaging apps were still available. Some people also used VPNs to access blocked platforms, so they could inform the international community. By Monday morning at 9 a.m., demonstrators started gathering at Maitigar. Most were students in their teens and 20s, wearing school and college uniforms. They held signs saying, "Shut down corruption, not social media," "Unban social media," and "Youth against corruption." The movement became organic and rapidly spread across Kathmandu. Initially, the protests were completely peaceful. Then came a tragic turning point. When thousands of protesters marched toward the parliament complex, police used crowd control measures like water cannons and rubber bullets. Rubber bullets may sound harmless, but their impact can seriously injure people. When protesters pushed through barbed wire and tried to enter the parliament building, the situation escalated dramatically. Police feared that the parliament would be breached, so they used tear gas, rubber bullets, and even live ammunition. At Singha Durbar, the government headquarters, police decided to use lethal force to prevent entry. This decision was highly controversial because the protesters were mostly unarmed students who had begun the protest peacefully. So, what was the result? At least 19 people were killed on Monday. Over 100 people were injured, and total reported injuries exceeded 400. These are not just numbers. These were real young lives that were lost. People said that the very youth the government claimed to protect were now unsafe in their own country. Naturally, public anger toward the government exploded. On Monday evening, Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak submitted his resignation during a cabinet meeting led by Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. He stepped down, citing moral responsibility for the deaths and injuries. When a government official resigns purely on moral grounds, it shows how serious the situation really is. After mounting pressure, international criticism, and the reported deaths of 19 people, the Nepal government finally lifted the social media ban. On Tuesday, September 9, 2025, the communications minister announced that the shutdown of social media platforms had been withdrawn and services were restored. But this was only damage control. The real issues remained unresolved. Curfews were imposed in Kathmandu, Butwal, Pirahawa, and Itahari. The government clearly stated that no gatherings, rallies, or protests would be allowed, and strict action would be taken. The army was also deployed in Kathmandu. Some reports even claimed that security forces entered private homes, making citizens feel unsafe in their own houses. The United Nations issued a statement saying it was ready to assist Nepal. The UN Human Rights Office said it was shocked by the deaths and urged a transparent investigation. The Committee to Protect Journalists warned that blocking social media would seriously hinder journalism and access to news. International pressure was a major reason behind the government's quick reversal. In today's world, it is very difficult to justify authoritarian measures. Nepal's recent history of bans and unbans shows a strange pattern. TikTok was banned in November 2023, unbanned in August 2024. Telegram was banned in July 2024. This shows that the government lacks a clear digital policy. Decisions are made suddenly and reversed when pressure builds. The social media ban was only the trigger. The real frustration was deep-rooted corruption. Corruption exists everywhere, but in Nepal, no one is held accountable. Economic opportunities are extremely limited. People have no voice in government decision-making, and now even basic freedoms are being restricted. Students are demanding tax transparency and documentation, a core governance issue that remains unresolved even after the unban. Nepal is a developing country with a population of around 30 million. Here, the internet and social media are lifelines, especially for the youth. They are used for education, employment, communication, and income. Many households depend on digital platforms to survive. Cutting off social media suddenly is like cutting off oxygen. The government must understand the consequences of such actions, especially when corruption and economic stress already exist. Nepal's case is a clear warning to governments everywhere. Digital rights are fundamental, not a luxury. When 19 young lives are lost while demanding basic transparency, this is not just a government failure. It is a loss for humanity. Nepalese youth have shown extraordinary courage. They proved that democracy survives when people fight for it. Now the responsibility lies with the political system. The real work begins now. What happens next remains to be seen. But I hope everyone in Nepal is safe and okay. And I hope people do not stop fighting for their rights, because these rights belong to them. With that, this video ends here. If you are from Nepal and want to learn about the Nepal Royal Massacre, do watch that video. The link is pinned in the comments. That's it for this video. Bye-bye.